Dipper knew his surprise could be chalked up to more than just pain medicine. Through the years of drifting from porch to nothing but a dirt patch, he was able to identify signs of a suspicious home. It depended mainly on the exterior. From tastefully painted buildings deceiving to the public eye, to crumbling homes that resembled more closely to shacks that was filled with garbage and the utter indifference towards the incoming children. Those especially didn't last long. Both twins had learned to apply such signs to know what they would be dealing with. It wasn't entirely a wild guess, but it strayed far from a prediction. People were unpredictable anyway. Dipper had seen adults who drank away their problems and could switch their demeanor at a flip of a coin. But a cabin in the woods? This was new territory. Literally. Dipper regretted every action leading to him and Mabel landing in that god-forsaken hospital. He'd fought tooth and nail to be kept awake, but they'd sedated him for fear he'd become too aggressive, which was a term they supplied for his behavior a lot lately. The twins had been removed from a home they'd been suffering in for months, but it meant transportation was necessary, and Dipper hated the fact that he wasn't there to distract Mabel through it. He'd slept through it all. It'd taken tons of strength to push through the haziness of drug-induced sleep, but Dipper didn't care if it meant getting to reach Mabel. She seemed immensely relieved to have him conscious, but the storm was barely stirring. Neither twin knew what to make of the man on the porch, besides a very evident fact that he was old. Old as dirt. Dipper had quipped maybe he'd fall over dead one day and let them run the show. But the man showed that bitter stubbornness old people held when they refused to give up and die. Stronger than he looked, and that wasn't a good thing. Mabel had taken the task of sneaking peeks at the files back within the car. The man, the new foster parent, was named Stanford Pines, owner of the Mystery Shack and a natural entrepreneur. All that meant was he was a whiz at fake personas and good acting, and it made him all the more dangerous. Dipper or Mabel? The question that hung in the air for who'd be most targeted. More often, it was Dipper. Occasionally, it was Mabel, before Dipper brought a stop to it. Sometimes it was both of them, and they preferred that far more. They could never predict, taking it as random pickings and a silent order to look as tough as possible. There was never any protocol, and neither twin quite understood the reasoning behind any of the abusive tactics foster parents dished out. Maybe every place was bad. Maybe every place just hated orphans. They wouldn't be surprised. They'd learned not to trust grown-ups a long time ago. They went through the tour of their home in complete silence. Dipper was all ears, and Mabel was all eyes, their respective roles helping when it came to inspecting the new homes. Once alone, they collaborated on information to reach as accurate of a conclusion as possible. It worked most of the time. The man, Mabel observed, dressed in a funny way, wearing a black pressed suit with a thin red bow tie. His silky-looking fez with a dangling tassel tempted her, and she wished one day she could touch the fez to just see how it felt. A businessman was a risky parent. The twins had had a man like that once. Their fifth out of altogether 7 homes, being they never stayed more than a year in any new foster homes. The man had looked forward to spending his checks on his own needs, and often spent all day in his room, talking with clients or typing away on a desktop computers they weren't allowed to touch. The twins easily took care of each other, with trips to the kitchen for food and confining themselves in their room in quiet boredom. They eventually got removed for never being sent to school, and none of the man's neighbors had even known he'd had kids in that house. That had been one of the tamer instances. It would be far more preferable to leave both twins to their own devices. Surviving was easier with them as a duo. The home was a unique one, and Mabel found herself liking the decor. Flashing knickknacks and old-timey devices made a smile form, and she pointed excitedly to the fish tank in the living room. The rooms smelled musty and soda cans were placed in the most bizarre places, but the home was clean. Overall, they'd been in worse. Mabel shivered even within the warmth of the house, and Dipper squeezed her hand in reassurance. Both twins were confused. The typical signs weren't there. They remembered the two people on the back porch, but those people hadn't made a reappearance, and Stanford was busy with the foster workers. No red flags, which the two took as a sign of those flags being very well hidden. With that thought, they kept each other close.
And that's the place. It's not exactly a 5-star hotel, but it's livable. Roof only leaks about 60% of the time.
Stan ended the tour within the foyer, the heating vent blasting them with overly humid air. It had been a long while since Stan had even bothered with the heat. Judging from the looks on his guests' faces, they weren't appreciating it.
"I've got them a room,"
Stan assured, accepting the files the woman handed to him, with what sounded like the beginnings to a very long legal spiel. He interrupted her smoothly by pointing to the twins' duffels, sagging bags that would have been lucky to have a piece of lint in it.
"That all they got?"
"You're welcome to buy them any other essentials," the woman said. "Make sure you keep a record, and you'll get reimbursed."
"Right. The reason I even agreed,"
Stan grunted, as he dumped the stack of files on the nearest table. Said table collapsed in a heap on the rug with the weight. "We'll be returning within the week to check in and determine the proper living conditions."
"So, you're giving me the kids?"
Stan eyed the twins, swinging up his cane to point to the nearest twin, which happened to be the boy. The gold tip of the cane barely brushed past the kid's head, but he gave a nearly cat-like yelp in response.
"Before you've even seen how safe the house is?"
"This was an emergency case," the woman insisted, distractedly pulling out her phone and tapping away. "We've got some other cases to tend to. Any other questions?"
"When do I get rid of them?"
"End of the summer," the man responded as the children turned to face him. "They'll be out of your hair then." "Now, keep out of trouble," the woman demanded, piercing the twins with an icy look. "Stir up enough, and we'll just send you to separate orphanages in next state over. Don't go causing another hospital trip. You've got enough on the record." The boy's eye twitched, but both twins nodded mechanically. The caseworkers nodded to Stan before turning and leaving without another word. Stan shut the door behind them, making the move to lock it before waiting to face the twins. He had kids in the house now, and he had no clue what to do with them. He didn't know how to talk to kids without trying to bribe them into annoying their parents into buying a useless trinket or an accidentally dangerous souvenir. Could they hold decent conversations? He didn't think they were stupid, but given what he'd seen in the past, he wouldn't be very surprised.
Guess we gotta talk rules,"
Stan began, forcing himself to stare down at the runts near his feet. The boy looked pitiful, leaning against his sister for support with a leg propped up like a crippled flamingo. Stan saw features of exhaustion, fear, and months or years even of torment on their small faces. Faint scars of varying stages of healing were noticeable upon their faces, and their eyes almost appeared hollow. Nothing about them held the happiness and fascination a child was supposed to hold and annoy all adults with. In fact, neither child had spoken a word in Stan's direction. The boy, Dipper, was small and lanky, unnervingly thin, and dirty bandages were wrapped around his fingers. The girl, Mabel, was the same size as her brother, but not nearly as thin. She was shivering, staring with glassy eyes, and seemingly struggling to hold her brother's weight. Stan forced himself not to dwell on the implications.
"First of all, no going in the woods,"
Stan said, seeing no flicker of emotions on the kids' faces.
"It's dangerous. I mean, I guess you could, but you might come back missing an arm. It's not my problem."
Mabel blinked.
"Second, I don't want you guys touching things you shouldn't. That means the trinkets, my TVs, anything in the gift shop.
Dipper's nose wrinkled, but instead of argument, the boy just sneezed.
And third, I'm the boss here. What I say goes. Understand?
No answer. The twins stared like Stan had grown a second head. Stan wondered, hoped they understood him.
I said, do you understand? Comprendes? Hablas Ingles? No?
Judging from the twins' even further confused expressions, that hadn't helped.
Alright, judging from the dumbstruck looks on your faces. You get me. Call me Stan.
With that, Stan stuck out a hand, awaiting a handshake or some other type of action to seal the deal. The children stared at the appendage as if it had morphed into a serpent. Eventually, Dipper reached out tentatively, touched Stan's hand.
Good enough.
Stan withdrew his hand, wiping it against his suit coat. Already, these kids were killing him.
I don't got any spare rooms, but Zeus and I, that's our handyman, made it all nice and cozy up in the attic. Nearly almost heated and everything.
Dipper suddenly bristled, and Mabel slapped a hand over her mouth, the two reacting as if Stan had mercilessly murdered a puppy right before them.
You scared of heights or something? Look, I've got nothing else.
Still, the twins remained silent. It was starting to annoy him.
Unless you'd rather sleep outside in the damn dirt, be my guest.
Mabel choked back a sob, alarming Stan until she seemed to get her act together and tilt her head against her brother's. At that very moment, it seemed Dipper's biggest wish was for Stan's death, then and there. The boy wrapped his free arm around his sister, his attitude returning the same hostility Stan had received outside.
Okay.
Stan tried to placate, but Mabel didn't seem to pay attention, and the boy was starting to not scare him. Stan Pines was never scared. Bother Stan, just a bit.
Yeesh, no jokes, I get it. The attic is all set up for you, really. Dusted and everything.
Lead the way. Finally, words passed Dipper's lips, and Stan was a bit put off from the child's weary voice. He sounded like a man returning from a taxing office job, or maybe war. There seemed to be an odd fine line there.
Right up here.
Stan took the lead, mounting the steps and going slower than usual as the children followed, still linked by hands.